خليل الله وموسى كليم الله ثم عيسى روح الله محمد حبيب الله.
Now we're going to go into the conditions of the guardian, the one who gives away the bride to be in marriage. And most of the masail that lead to the invalidity of the nikah is as a result of people not having the wara', not having the precaution in figuring out if the guardian is valid. Especially, and I'm going to be very crass sometimes, I will be compassionate when need be, but we have to call it an ace and a spade in other times. If someone's guardian is not a valid guardian, you will find people not have the backbone to handle the case accordingly. At the same time, handling the case does not mean you tell your dad, by the way, you can't give me away because you're an X, Y, and Z, whatever the case may entail. There are ways where you can go about it with wisdom, but we're going to go into that inshallah. But keep in mind, if any of these cases apply to you or for your future nikah, you don't have to be crass and brute about it to the guardian. You can be very smart about it, i.e. have the nikah, a private nikah the day before, but in the eyes of the people, you don't humiliate your father or grandfather, whoever the guardian may be, unless of course said guardian is someone who is God conscious of the shara and they want to do what's right. And I've seen both cases play out for better and for worse. But we're going to continue inshallah. The author says the contract of marriage is not valid without a male guardian. So who exactly is the guardian of the bride to be? He is the one who conducts the marriage contract for the bride. So the guardian in the default case is her father. And the following is the order of the paternal guardian queue. I like using that as the proper noun. So it's capitalized paternal guardian queue. So this is a queue that must be followed step by step. So for example, if the father is dead or not a Muslim, while she's a Muslim, for example, she's a convert, or he's not adil by the madhab's definition of adala, then the queue is as follows. And by the way, adil, we're going to explain that inshallah. The first in line is the father. Then you have, if he's not available, the paternal grandfather. And remember, when we say not available, either he passed away or he's not a qualifying guardian. Then you have the paternal grandfather. Then after him, you have the full brother. Then after him, you have the paternal half-brother. So I'm sure a lot of you now are thinking of cases from nikahs you have attended. When the father's not around, for some reason people always skip baba. And Hadari baba means grandfather, not father. I know we have some Adams here. People will skip the grandfather. They'll jump straight to the uncle on the mom's side, for example. Or because they don't like their dad, for whatever reason, legitimate or not, we're not talking about the details, they just skip their father altogether. They say, he's not my real dad, and they get all emotional and they cut him out. And they don't realize there's a fiqhi repercussion of that. So this is the queue, and as you can see in your template, these are all paternal. You can't skip to your mother's side. So after the full brother, if he's not around, he's not available, he doesn't qualify, you have the paternal half-brother from your father's side. And I'm going to emphasize on the father's side because some people, they can't hear, whether due to bad audio, they might think I said maternal. So paternal, i.e. from the father's side. And then the son of the full brother, and if not him, the son of the paternal half-brother from your dad's side, or your izera, the paternal uncle from your dad's side, or your paternal first cousin, i.e. your first cousins from your father's side. And if they're not available, then you have the khalifa. And if you're living in 2023, we do not have a khalifa. Allahu A'lam how long this video will last on YouTube. And if the khalifa is not available, then the qadi. Now some people say this is very outdated fiqh, but the reality is, in my father's generation, there were qadis in Ethiopia. We are actually the first generation of Muslims to not have a qadi, if you actually think about it. We've had an Islamic caliphate up until 100 years ago. 1923 was when the caliphate was dissolved. So when you think about 1450 some odd years, almost 1500 years, only the last 100 years has been devoid of a khalifa or a qadi. And if the qadi is not available or not around, like is the case now, then we have the proxy qadi, or the appointed guardian. Now you guys can see these symbols. I always forget what is a clove. I think the first one is a spade, and then the remaining are cloves. I think they're called cloves or clubs. But nonetheless, this is to signify that the stronger saying in the Shafi'iyy school is that he must be attributed with adala, yani the father. But the rest in the queue is that they must be adil. So in the Shafi'i school, again, the father, the stronger saying is that he must be attributed with adala. And the weak yet a valid saying is that the father does not have to be adil. As for the rest, like the brother or the grandfather or the uncle, they must be attributed with adala. So if he was not adil, then he would not be able to conduct the contract. And what is someone who is adil? Adil, if you want to translate it, is someone who is trustworthy or upright. I like to use the word upright or righteous because some people say, well, I trust this person. That's not what adil means in the fiqh sense. In the fiqh sense means he fulfills all of his obligations. So if this person did not learn the fard al-ayn, for example, if you'd like to take that gamble, you can, and we're going to explain why. But I wouldn't recommend it. So he fulfills all the obligations, which is by learning. He avoids all of the major sins, which is by learning. And in the case of the guardian, he must have the conduct or the character or the demeanor appropriate for the people of his status. So for example, if he is a sheikh, it is not befitting for a sheikh to be a joker, for example, someone who always jokes a lot, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, excessive laughter kills the heart. It's not the attribute of the pious people to always be cracking jokes. MashaAllah. So what would deem one a major sinner for those who have not taken their fard al-ayn or who need a review? If someone doesn't pray salah, for example, or they make haram income, for example, or they don't bid the good and forbid the evil, they're always the silent, neutral, cool guy, then by definition they would be a fasiq, even if it was only one major sin on their account. So if this person was an adil, then the priority goes to the one after him. And again, for those of you who identify as Shafi'i, you have the right to execute your madhab any way you like. So if the father was not adil, and he has some major sins on account, he has prayers he has not made up from the past, or he still drinks, or he eats haram meat, whatever that may be, then according to the weak yet valid saying in the school, you can still utilize them. Don't start unnecessary drama saying, I want to take the strong saying in every case of my life, mashallah. Especially when it's valid. We're not asking you to switch madhabs here. So if the father was a fasiq, or a major sinner, and I understand that word may be triggering for some people, but if I commit a major sin, I'm a fasiq. Just like if I murder, I'm a murderer. And just like if I donate, I am a generous benefactor. So if the father was a major sinner, for example, and the person wanted to take the stronger saying, and the father, he doesn't object. He respects the religious views of his Shafi'i son or daughter. Or daughter in this case, because the son doesn't need to be given away. Then it goes to the grandfather. And if both the father and grandfather were major sinners, or worse, murtads, they left the religion, right? That's in Ahkam al-Ridda, for those of you guys who have learned it, or not learned it. Then it goes to the brother, and so on. And the contract conducted by the guardian, who is not adil, is invalid. So if the guardian was a major sinner by drinking alcohol, as we said, if he repents, then he's deemed adil. For example, if the only issue with this guy is he drinks, so in the session or the day before, he makes istighfar. It's not up to you to say, well, was he sincere or not? You judge from what is apparent. So the Shafi'iyya say you judge as what is apparent. So let's say the father was not alive, the grandfather wasn't alive, you go down the queue to your brother or your uncle, or let's say it's even your grandfather. Do you have to investigate and research, does this guy commit major sins? You don't. You judge by what is apparent. You judge by what is apparent. You don't have to investigate. And this is important because for those who say we don't make takfir on anybody, again, we don't follow our emotions when it comes to religion. Yes, there are people who are extreme in takfir, and they have no right to do so. But the other extremity is not calling an ace a ace and a spade a spade. For example, if someone negates Allah's existence. Or someone says, I don't believe in the legitimacy of Al-Quran. This is kufr. Now, the goal isn't to go around and tell people, by the way, you're a kafir, what do you know, and rub their ignorance in their face. Some people, they have no hikmah, and they need to be dealt as in a separate situation. But the reality is, if, for example, someone's father says, I don't believe in Islam, or Muhammad was a crazy man, or this Quran was man-made, or it is a compilation of Christian and Jewish and Zoroastrian beliefs, and these are actually things I've heard in the Muslim community, then it's not, again, for you to have a crusade with this person. You give him da'wah in the proper way that you see fit. Some people are more accepting than others. However, the reason why you have to know ahkam al-ridda, what nullifies one's Islam, is so then you don't get in a mas'ala like having a nikah with someone who is not a qualified guardian. Because as we spoke about last week, the result of that is, well, you know, fornication, illegitimate children, and we do not spend our whole lives being chastised just to go down that rabbit hole. And also the case where the paternal first cousin is able to be the guardian is if she does not have any of the other potential guardians, as we mentioned. So this specific cue that is in your template must be followed. And you can find these in many books of Shafi'iyy Fiqh. The cue of the guardians comprising of paternal relatives to the woman is as such. Why is it that has to be paternal? Is because they share the same lineage as a woman in this case. So relatives for the bride from her mother's side would not qualify because their lineage does not match hers. So as much as I love the men on my mother's side, they're not from the Shaykh family, right? They're not from my lineage because the lineage Islamically runs through the father's side. So this would be like her maternal uncles, the brothers of her mother, who do not share the same lineage as the paternal uncles, right? So my dad has brothers and my mom has brothers. But as far as the lineage, yani being the Shaykh lineage, that would be from my father's side. And that's why we keep the Q on the father's side in the Shafi'iyy school. So the maternal side of the family, i.e. let's say my mom, which are the mother's male relatives, are attributed to their grandfather. So for example, my grandfather, Baba Rashid Ali, he is the one who has that lineage for them. They all go down that family line. They don't go down the Shaykh line. And likewise, despite your mother being married to your father, and they have a close relation, she does not have the lineage, and likewise, her brothers do not have the lineage of your father. Also, the son is not a guardian for his mother. This is where a lot of people get confused, because the son also does not share the same lineage as his mother. Meaning, if your mother wants to remarry, this is oftentimes the case, you will see sons trying to be the guardian to give the mother away in marriage, but it has to be someone from her paternal side. That is, a son cannot give away his mother in marriage. And sometimes the father's available, but the grandfather conducts a marriage contract, because if the father authorized the grandfather to be the one to conduct the marriage contract, then this could happen, because sometimes people want to show in their culture respect of honoring the elder of the family. And as we mentioned, if none of these people in the paternal queue exist, or they're not alive, then the Khalifa or the Qadi serves her. And if the woman became Muslim while her family is a non-Muslim, what does she do in this case? Because she doesn't have any of those qualifying people in the queue. She goes to the Muslim Qadi, explains the situation, and the Muslim Qadi would be her guardian. But how about if there's no Khalifa or no Qadi? Or the Qadi refuses to do it unless he's paid a hefty fee, yani a burdensome fee. I'll give you away in marriage for $2,000. Then in this case, the couple both go to an adil Muslim and tell him, Hakamnaka fi ziwajina, which means we now appoint you as the proxy judge to marry us, or we appoint you as the guardian to marry us off. And you can say it in English, by the way. You can say it in any language. But they both have to do it. You can't tell your bride because you don't want to deal with the wedding stress, or she says, I'll take care of it. She can't appoint someone for a contract that relates to both the bride and groom. So they would both say to the person, we now appoint you as the proxy judge to marry us. And it can happen right before the nikah. If you tell them through text message, for example, or voice note, just have them say it verbally when you guys see him, inshallah ta'ala. And this proxy has the power of attorney, if that's the right word to use, for their marriage contract like her guardian would have done. And this proxy would tell the groom, Zawajtuka binti or Zawajtuka ibnati, which means I now give you so-and-so in marriage for the agreed upon mahar. And the groom says, Qabiltu ziwajaha, which means I now accept this or her marriage for the agreed upon mahar. I think we have something here in the chat. But if there's no family on the dad's side, they all passed away, who comes first from the mom's side? Okay, great question. So that's what we're going over now. So the mother's side never comes into play. You go straight to the Khalifa. There's no Khalifa, as we mentioned. Then we go to the Qadi. There's no Qadi, as we mentioned. Now you appoint an Adil Muslim, and this can be any Muslim that's Adil, whether it's from your dad's relatives, whether it's a friend, whether it's from your mom's side. It could be the Sheikh himself. It can be an Imam or a local Muslim that you know. So long as this person is Adil and there's not someone in the queue that has right over him. Yani, you can't just skip your brother because you don't like him, if he's Adil, for example. So when can you go to the mother's side? Yani, when you're at the point where you want to appoint a proxy Qadi, meaning you want to appoint someone because there's no one else in the queue as a last means resort. And likewise, it is sufficient for the guardian to be apparently considered adil, as we mentioned. So if he is not upright and trustworthy, then he would not be the guardian of the bride, even if he is her father, according to the stronger saying. However, like we said, it is valid to take the lesser saying. And if he repents, he would be her guardian. If not, then her paternal grandfather would be next in the queue, as we mentioned. And it is recommended for the guardian to make a certain speech before the contract. And the interpretation of the speech is what we mentioned in the last class, yani the khutbatun nikah. MashaAllah. And so I won't mention that for now. You guys can refer to video number 2 in regards to that khutbatun nikah. And I have the translation there as well. And it is recommended for the nikah to be done during the month of Shawwal. It's also recommended for it to be on a Friday, and in the beginning of the day, and in a masjid. A masjid. We didn't say musalla, we didn't say markaz, we didn't say Islamic center, we didn't say institute. A masjid, yani it's waqf. But if you do it in a musalla, there's no problem, but yani you don't get the reward for a masjid, just so you know. And for those who don't know, a waqf is when a piece of property, for example, it could be for property, it could be for money, it could be for a business, is now deemed owned by the Muslims. Like Palestine, it's waqf. It's owned by the Muslim. That's why you can't sell it even if you wanted to. Or for example, a Muslim cemetery, right? Once that land is deemed waqf, it is owned by the Muslims. The person can't buy and sell it anymore. It is owned by all Muslims. And likewise for the masajid. So if a building is made waqf to be a masjid, then it is owned by all the Muslims. However, most of the places known as masjid such and such, or known as so-and-so Islamic center, are not actually waqf in the United States and Canada, mashallah. But again, these are good sunnahs to implement, but if you're not able to, for example, by living in North America for the masjid, it's not a problem. So these 4 matters are recommended, like the Prophet ﷺ did with Lady Aisha radiallahu anha. And it is also recommended that adil people, righteous people, are invited to attend the contract, aside from the witnesses. And we're going to talk about the witnesses, inshallah ta'ala, probably next week, unless we get to it today. Some people, they like to have a prestigious elite nikah that's so private, it's just friends and family. But it's devoid of a lot of barakah when you don't invite the salihin. So it's a good sunnah to implement if you're able to, inshallah. Now we're going to go to the part known as points of clarity. These are often, despite the class, questions that are asked or that need clarification, either because the teacher wasn't clear or the case is new and the person is trying to understand and process it. And this will be in the final text, inshallah, for you guys to have. But the reason why I didn't put it in the template, and I will not put these in the template, is because, again, many Muslims, for example, we had maybe 60 something people sign up for this class, and a third are actually attending, which is fine, alhamdulillah. Even if there's one sincere person, wallahi, it makes my heart happy. I just want the Muslims to be proud and strong and informed in their religion. However, you'll have people, they just want to read, and even when I'm teaching, if people are asking clarifying questions, what does that mean? It's just like in university. Just like in university, there's going to be things that you don't understand. So how about if you're reading on your own? You have no way to decipher if you're comprehending things properly, or to catch a typo or a mistake. Typos and mistakes can happen in Islamic books. So it was asked, what is the judgment of a guardian who writes to someone else, I now give you my daughter so-and-so in marriage? And he had the intention to execute that. Yeah, and he wasn't just merely writing this on a piece of paper. So the case is, if he wrote it with the intention of giving his daughter to that person in marriage, and this is valid, so long as that was his intention. So marriage and divorce in writing is valid so long as the niyyah is accompanied with it. Why do we say that? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, there are three things when done serious are serious, and when done jokingly, they are still serious. The marriage contract, the divorce, and the bringing the wife back to the marriage. Because verbally, if someone was just joking around, they didn't have the intention to give away their daughter. In front of a bunch of men, he says, I give you my daughter Zainab in marriage. And then the man who he addressed says, I accept Zainab in marriage now. And there's men who are hearing this, the nikah takes place, even if they were joking. But in the case of writing it, then it must be accompanied with the intention. How do you authorize someone not in the queue to serve as a proxy in your nikah? So of course, the statement of authorization to be said to the one conducting the marriage contract as a proxy, not as her wali al-amr. The bride and groom, as we said, they both say, we now appoint you to act as a judge or a proxy qadi in the execution of our marriage, or anything similar to that. This is the meaning of hakamnaka fi ziwajina. The proxy, by the way, does not have to say an accepting statement. He doesn't have to say, for example, I now accept. And of course, he would say to the groom in the nikah, I now give you so-and-so in marriage, and the groom says, I now accept in marriage. Ahmed, you have a question. Allah yubarak fikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So someone had a question here. They said, in regards to the woman, what if she goes to one of the males in her paternal queue and agree to accept the marriage to the groom she chose? Can she skip him to use an adil Muslim male as a guardian and still marry?
Can you repeat that question? Hold on. So there's someone in the queue that qualifies. Okay, it's in writing. That's better, because that was, mashallah. So she goes to one of the males in her paternal queue. Oh, and he does not agree. Okay, I misheard. He does not agree to accept the marriage, the groom she chose. Can she just skip him to go use an adil Muslim male as guardian and still marry him? So this case has details. Why did he say no? And we're going to come to that, inshallah. So when we talk about, or how about this? If you can write why he said no, then we'll go from there, inshallah. But just to be brief, just because your father says no, you don't just get to skip him, for example. The fuqaha of the Shafi'iyy school do talk about if the father says no out of spite for his daughter. Because there's some father-daughter relationships where it's very nasty. So just to be cruel to her, it's not because the guy's not qualified. It's not because, he doesn't think that she's ready or the guy's ready. He's just trying to be, barbaric to her. Then in this case, she would go to the qadi. But this more so falls in line with the details of the qualified groom. So let's do this. If the answer is not brought by the time we discover or talk about what is a qualified groom, then we'll answer it, inshallah. And if there's a specific personal case, this person, you guys can call me after the class, inshallah ta'ala. But there's many details, as you'll see, that affect when you can move this way or that way. But just merely, Baba said that you cannot marry so-and-so, you can't just skip him in the queue. It doesn't work like that. Because the father has the God-given right. You can't just skip him like he doesn't exist. It was also asked, is it a condition to say now in the contract? Dr. Shaykh Samir al-Qadi, Hafidhullah, he said, I would not say this is a condition, but I would advise against leaving it out. So then it was asked, if he doesn't say now, like for example, I now give my daughter marriage, is the marriage contract valid? So in the English language, if you say, I give you my daughter in marriage, linguistically, right? If you're not a linguist, don't answer. I'm not a linguist to this kind of extent. So if someone says, I give you my daughter in marriage, does it mean I am now doing it? You know, these are questions that, you know, bear some answers. So it was asked or commented or replied, if they are gathered to do it now, then they mean now, meaning in the session. So this is why Shaykh Hafidhullah, he said, that's why I'm not saying this is a must, but I'm not saying to leave it out neither. Because again, historically, these nikahs are done in Arabic, right? So as far as the linguistics and the mechanics of the Arabic language, this is known and is documented. Now someone might say, well, why can't we just do the nikah contract in Arabic here too? Because as you'll see later on, when it comes to the witnesses, one of the conditions for the witness that they have to understand the contract. This is not my father's generation or the past how many generations where they understood the language of the contract. So if you say it in Arabic, but the witnesses, let alone no one in the congregation, understood the meaning of the words said, the nikah is not valid because there were no witnesses. You can't witness a contract you don't understand. MashaAllah. What if a woman has multiple brothers? Who gives her away? So when you go down the queue, if you're now at the point of the full brothers, then they would have to agree amongst themselves. And if all 5 of them are adil, then all of them agree on one of them to conduct the marriage contract. Or the 5 of them tell the groom, and this is so beautiful, mashallah, we now give you our sister so-and-so in marriage. So you can all do it together. Wouldn't that be beautiful, watching them hold hands and say, we all give you our sister, mashallah. So it is recommended for the oldest one who is more knowledgeable in Babul Nikah, yani the chapter of marriage, to conduct the contract. So if you want to do what's more honorable, the one who's more knowledgeable in the chapter of Nikah. We didn't say more knowledgeable in Quran recitation. We didn't say more knowledgeable in tafsir. Because this is a very delicate contract, as you can see. One slip or one thing done out of ignorance, don't be like the pagan Arabs who said to their children when their children were trying to embrace Islam, or when their children were on the fence of embracing Islam, they said, if we're wrong, you're going to, we'll take responsibility for it in the next life. The mistake of your parents, the mistake of your sheikh or imam does not save you. They don't erase your sins for you. We're not Catholics, let's be frank here. So this is why it's recommended for the one amongst the brothers who's most knowledgeable in the chapter of marriage to conduct it. If they did not do that, and the other brother made the contract, that would be a valid contract. And if one brother was older, but the younger one was more knowledgeable in Babul Nikah, then the one more knowledgeable is recommended to conduct the contract despite the fact that he is younger. We're going to skip the part of how to do the marriage contract according to Abu Hanifa, because a lot of people have no adab in this case. If you're a Hanafi, well then you need to learn Babul Nikah from a Hanafi scholar, mashallah. And by the way, there are certain things that people don't realize are the implications of having a Hanafi contract. For those who want to go out and have a Hanafi contract without the parents knowing whatsoever, if the father finds out, for example, he has the authority to nullify your contract, nullify your marriage, for example, just like that, and the marriage is no longer intact. So don't go around having Hanafi contracts behind dumpsters or whatever the youth are doing nowadays. If 2 people entered in an invalid marriage contract and he believed it was valid and they had unlawful intercourse mashallah, and they believed it was lawful, are they committing blasphemy? Are they committing kufr by this? And again, Shaykh Samir Hafidhullah, he said that is such a very general question. You need to be more specific. And this is a very big indication someone did not understand Babul Ridda, Ahkam al-Ridda very well. So, in the case where they had an invalid marriage contract and they thought it was lawful, right? They're not blasphemers in this case, because in this case that is being described here, which is the case of many Muslims, may Allah preserve them and grant them knowledge. Allahumma Ameen. First and foremost, kufr or blasphemy is, for example, to degrade the religion, or knowingly contradict the religion, or to belie the religion, or to degrade what is honorable in the religion, or to contradict the shahadatain and what it entails in meaning. But if this person contradicted the religious rule of how to get married, not out of arrogance or stubbornness, or they knew it and then they went against it despite that, no, it's because they actually didn't know how to do it. This is not blasphemy. They don't blaspheme. So before someone goes into the and hukm and yaqul questions, they should learn ahkam al-ridda. A lot of the waswas in regards to blasphemy and the mistakes is because people rush to judge something or presume something is blasphemy when in actuality it's far from blasphemy. And of course we mentioned the proxy does not need to say an accepting statement. And someone asked, as for the meat slaughtered by a Jewish or Christian with the aforementioned religious lineages, is there a difference of opinion? So yes, according to Imam Abu Hanifa, it is easier. It is not a condition that their ancestors embraced Christianity before the revelation of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And about the slaughtering, how do we know that it is permissible to eat from his slaughtering if, for example, he was Jewish and his ancestors embraced Judaism after the revelation of Jesus? MashaAllah. So some of them are known by their lineage and other matters. There is a sect that is known, for example, and if they are not known, MashaAllah, then we can eat. We can eat. MashaAllah. There's a typo here. This is why we don't give away the book just like that. So in regards to the Jewish lineage, if we doubt, we're not sure about when did their most earliest Muslim ancestor, we say Muslim ancestor because if they embraced the nation of Musa or the nation of Isa without the perversions, then by virtue they would be a Muslim of that nation, right? So if you doubt it for the Jewish person, for example, then you can still eat it. But if you doubt for the Christian slaughterer, you cannot eat it. You have to have confirmation of the lineage of the Christian slaughterer. And it was also asked, can we ask this Jew or Christian about their lineage? So if you want, you can ask. MashaAllah. This is why in East Africa, like Ethiopia, because the Shafi'iyy madhab is spread there, they do not eat the slaughtering of the Christians because they don't know if their ancestors embraced Christianity before or after the revelation to Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And again, someone asked, in Toronto, some foods have written on it kosher. Can we eat it? So in the Hanafi madhab, it is easier. According to a Shafi, if you do not know, MashaAllah, you can eat it in regards to the Jew. There's another typo here. If you do not know if his ancestors embraced the religion before or after the prophet of their time, you can eat it. If you have an ihtimal that the one who slaughtered the meat, their ancestors embraced the religion after the prophet of their time, then, mashallah, it depends again, as we mentioned, whether this person is a Jewish slaughterer or a Christian slaughterer, but we're talking in the context of kosher, then it's fine. And there are more details in Manhajatullah. And this is also the case for the man who wants to marry the Christian or Jew, as we said. And someone asked, what does a woman do if her father rejects a qualified groom out of spite for his daughter? So this may or may not be the case that was asked earlier. So we'll talk about that after the class, inshallah. So if a qualified man wants to marry a woman, but her father, yani the father of the bride-to-be, rejects him for no reason, just to torture her due to his fallen out relationship with his daughter, in this case, the bride and groom go to the qadi, and the qadi conducts a marriage contract for them. This is if the man in question is a qualified groom. And inshallah, soon we will talk about the criteria of what defines a qualified groom. Here, the qualified groom is also a proper noun in this context. Because there's an actual definition for qualified groom. We don't mean qualified like he's a nice guy, he comes from a good family, he has money. If a man wants to marry a woman, and this is for a lot of you guys here who don't like to listen to mama. but his mother says to him, don't marry her, and she doesn't have any reason in this case, then in this case, is it better for the man to marry her or not? She's not saying that she's a bad person, she's a bad family, just for no reason. In this case, it is better not to marry her. In this case, it is better not to marry her. As you know, for the Muslim man, the one who has priority is the mother, mashallah, over his wife. Despite that, a lot of men nowadays, especially the Gen Zers, millennials I guess as well, they don't have a backbone. They don't know when to tell mom, hey mom, you're crossing the line, please, I love you, but don't do that. And they leave the wife, mashallah, we're talking about now when they're married, they leave the wife emotionally stuck. She can't speak to and stand up for herself because she's an in-law at the end of the day, especially if she's a classy woman. And the man doesn't say anything. You can correct and advise in-laws and family members without being disrespectful, without being brute. That's just a side comment. We'll cover that later, inshallah. So in this case, if the mother says, I don't want you to marry so-and-so, for no reason, it's better not to marry her, but if he does marry her, he's not sinful. But the question is, you are asking, what is better? It is better not to marry her. Did you guys hear about the narration of Abdullah ibn Umar? He married a wife and he loved her dearly. And his father, Umar ibn al-Khattab, told him, divorce her. Can you imagine the second greatest wali in human history telling you to divorce your wife? MashaAllah. So Abdullah didn't do it because he loved her so much. Then the Prophet ﷺ knew about it, so he told Abdullah, it is better for you to obey your father. He didn't say you're committing a sin. Because our aqidah, the aqidah of the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyya, is that a prophet would not be silent in the face of a sin. They tell you straight up when you're committing a haram. But in this case, the Prophet ﷺ told Abdullah, it's better for you to obey your father. And this is what the Shafi'iyya use as proof that in this case he would not be sinful. Is it valid to conduct a marriage contract via phone or Zoom? This is not valid. Why would you do something new that's never been done for you COVID marriages? MashaAllah. It's never been done before and you want to, experiment. How are the witnesses going to witness? It's not sufficient. The Shafi'iyya mentioned 4 must be in the same session, in person, the one giving away the bride. We have the groom, and we have the 2 witnesses. The phone, Zoom is not sufficient. If any of you guys have seen what goes on at CGI and these magic tricks on TikTok and Instagram, cameras are very, very, very deceiving. MashaAllah, it's not valid. Just like how religiously photos and videos are not valid evidence. MashaAllah. So let's not be naive here. We have 4 minutes left. MashaAllah, we have 4 minutes left. If there was a man and a woman with their guardians present with the Imam, and the Imam asks, is the guardian present? And he says yes. And is the woman present? And they say yes. So the Imam says to the woman, do you take this man in marriage? And then to the man, to which he says, yes. They both say yes. Now in the Hanafi school, would this be sufficient? This was asked. I don't know the answer. You'd have to ask a Hanafi scholar. A lot of people, they just pick a random guy to do their nikah because he's funny, or he's a family friend, or he has a little henna in his beard, without actually knowing anything about his fiqhi qualifications. Why? Yeah, mashallah. That's something, to this day, I can't wrap my mind around. You were talking about a very large marriage contract, ya ahbabana. Despite that, you're going to pick a random religious guy, and I'm putting religious in air quotes, a random religious guy to conduct your contract. You don't know what madhab he follows, because when you guys come to marital counseling later to a real faqih or a shaykh or an ustad, and you talk about, my husband never cooks, my wife never cleans, my husband doesn't do this, my wife doesn't do that. Is this haram? Well, it depends on the madhab that you did your nikah in, because there are slight differences and variances within the schools of thought. For example, in the Shafi'iyy school, the man is obligated to cook and clean. So when we cook and clean, we get the reward of a wajib, mashallah, of a fard. And wajib and fard mean the same in the Shafi'iyy school. In the Hanafi school and the Maliki school, the woman is obligated to do the cooking and the cleaning. Makes a big difference, right? Especially when you talk about fights and take out the trash. No, I don't have to take out the trash. MashaAllah. And finally, how did they used to do the weddings at the time of the companions or the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? MashaAllah. May Allah preserve the Hadari culture. Allahumma ameen. The good parts of it, that is, not the neo Hadari culture. Because what the Hadaris do nowadays is actually what the companions and the Prophet ﷺ used to do. They used to chant dhikri at weddings. At the time of the companions and the Prophet ﷺ in the weddings, they used to actually sing songs. People have this very strange notion that pious religious people are brute, they're strict, they don't smile, they don't know how to have a good time, they don't know how to joke. They're just sitting in masajid and houses all day reading Quran and running dhikr beads with their hands, although they're not even actually making dhikr. Fearing Allah does not mean you're a statue. Some people, they want to give off that image so then they can be respected more. And this is how ignorance works, right? People take advantage, and shayateen, they take advantage of the fact that you're ignorant. They used to actually have weddings in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It is documented in the books of hadith. So when we go later on about how to conduct a wedding in line with the methodology of the Prophet ﷺ, then you will see this. Where does this come from? It came from the actual hadith where they had weddings. So they would sing very nice madih, nasheed, dhikri, burdas, whatever you want to call it. Not like the ones sung nowadays in many weddings with the guitars or the keyboards, the string instruments. I'll talk about the advice later, but you're talking about probably one of the happiest days of your life. And you want to thank God that you found your 1 out of 3 billion people by celebrating with pagan customs like strings and winds, and you're spending a year's salary on this. You're saying, Allah, I'm so grateful I found the love of my life. I'm going to spend a year's salary for an 8-hour party that is filled with things that will be a witness against me on Yawm al-Qiyamah. MashaAllah. It was narrated that once the Prophet ﷺ to Lady Aisha radiallahu anha, you should sing this song. And he told her about a song from the wedding of one of the companions. And he said, he's from the Ansar, and the Ansar like listening to singing. So they used to do that at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Another proof against those who say you can't talk to women, it's haram to talk to women. They have to go in the back of the masjid with a veil and a curtain. They can't speak to us, and they got to write their questions on paper. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. We are Sunnis. We don't spread this nonsense. And the Hadaris, they maintain a similar tradition even today. A famous song that they sing for the couple. I hope I don't embarrass my wife with this one, but for example, Aruze hanane awabadir kahate. So it means my beloved bride, or the beloved bride, because the audience is singing it. Bride's name, awabadir kahate, yani a woman descended of Awabadir, or from Awabadir's people, who was like, I guess you can call it the pioneer of the Hadaris. And Aruzo, beloved groom, the groom's name, Nadimo, for example, Awabadir Legio, a man who descends from the people of Awabadir. Haffe alechina abadir ziyara, batsazalush kuta awal bezinara. So they're talking about making ziyara to Abadir's maqam. You see the hint here? Batsazalush kuta awal bezinara. Just like how it used to be done in the past in the region. Making ziyara to Abadir. Yani making istighatha and tawassul and tabarruk. Yani when these songs actually have a lot of Islamic practices that people don't realize. And this is another proof against those who say Mawlid is haram, Mawlid is bid'ah, Mawlid is kufr, shirk, and they have that same CD playing. Yani making istighatha. And I have a video about that on the channel. If you haven't seen it, you can check that out on your own time, inshallah. This is very common. And it talks about, yakna'ash. I think this means be blessed. How would you describe yakna'ash? And may Allah do it for you. May Allah give it to you. Facilitate, there you go. May Allah facilitate for you. All the blessings and endowments that come with marriage, mashallah. This is how the companions used to sing for the weddings. And we will end with this question, inshallah, before we go into the conditions of the witnesses. So if you have questions now, you can type it out. You can get it ready if you want to unmute your mic. And when we finish this final question, then we will go into questions, inshallah. We'll have Q&A for maybe 10 minutes. But of course, you guys are not obligated to stay for the Q&A. So did the brides used to wear white clothes? Like the white bridal dress? They call it what, velo, I think nowadays? So our Shaykh, Hafidhullah al-Qadi, he said, let me tell you something. Many people among us are far away from the reality of the people of the actual globe. You know how they say Americans think the world revolves around them? Many people are very far away from the reality. In many areas, many people might live for 20 years and they cannot even afford to buy something to wear on their feet for 20 years or more. So they don't think about a white dress for the bride. Yani, this is not even, they're trying to find shoes in the next decade. And it doesn't even occur to them when they talk about getting married or the like. Yani, white dress, limousine, a 4-tier or 5-tier cake that nobody's gonna eat. That's not even on their mind. Shaykhuna, rahmatullah alayh, al-Hafiz, al-Mujtahid, he said until he was 20 years old, he never wore anything on his feet. He got his first pair of shoes at age 20. And some people, they told us that they used to go learn with Shaykhuna and used to go with other scholars to learn. MashaAllah. So this person, he's a wealthy person today, alhamdulillah. But he told us at the time, I did not wear anything other than an izar. Izar, like a myrto. You know, it's like when you wrap a towel around you, except it's connected all the way around. It's like a barrel, but out of that clothy material. Or a lungi in Pakistan. So it covers the lower part of the body. He said, I didn't own anything else. I couldn't. I didn't have it. So I think we are far away from feeling and knowing and imagining how actually the majority of the world lives. So this person said, we went with Shaykhuna to acquire the knowledge from a shaykh in a village, a far one. So they walked about 200 miles to get there. And people can't drive 20 miles to the musalla or the masjid for a lesson, mashallah. It's a conversation for another day. And when they got there, the shaykh was not a wealthy person. He was poor, as is the norm for Islamic scholars. They're not usually meant to be multi-millionaires. It is very strange when you think Islamic scholars are scholars and all the scholars of Islam are multi-millionaires. MashaAllah. That is also a conversation for another day. This man, he was a famous shaykh despite the fact he was poor. And the students who came to learn from him were poor people as well. So they did not have money to buy food anyways. So in that village, they also did not have a storefront to sell food. So what they did in that village was every hut or every family in a hut would provide food for one of the students. What do we mean by providing food? At the end of the day, the students would come to them with a bowl in his hand and they would give him some of whatever they are eating. Whatever they're having that day, they would give a little bit to him. So when Shaykhuna and other people arrived there, every family was already sponsoring one student, if you will. So they couldn't give them food because that's all they could give. They could only sponsor one student. So each family, upon sponsoring only one person, this was the situation. So this man who said, I didn't even have anything but a myrto, he said, we would take a bowl and go to one particular hut and stand there. And they would give to us because they liked us. They had a liking for us. And the people looked highly to them. So every family, how much would they give? They would give 1 or 2 beans in that bowl. Can you imagine someone comes over for full mudammas and you give them 2 beans and they're elated? But Shaykhuna, rahmatullah alayh, he didn't accept to do that. He wouldn't do it, but we, the other students, we wanted to eat. So we went and each family would give us 1 or 2 beans. 2 beans was on a good day. That's all they could put in our bowl and we would eat that. MashaAllah. So this is what Shaykh Samira al-Qadi, al-Doctor, he relayed to us. So he said, I don't think you ever imagined something like this. This is what the people went through to learn. And here we eat, MashaAllah, 3 times every day, not even 2, with snacks in between, and liters of water. Some people carry around a gallon jug. And alhamdulillah, we are here learning and benefiting with each other. Allahu barik fikum. Through the internet, air conditioning, and walls so no bugs get in. But the Shaykh here was just giving us an idea of what some other people do to learn. So they're not even thinking about a white dress. And he said, I witnessed in some areas with students until nowadays, in the 2000s, it's the same thing. Those studying with the Shaykh, at the end of the day, each one of them takes a bowl, they go to a family, and they provide for them a very small morsel of food. He cannot afford to buy food, and they are all poor people. They can give a morsel of food to one person, so that's how they eat. And the Shaykh with whom they studied with is poor. This is happening today. It's not normal, it's not common, it's not the way of righteous people through Islamic history to be wealthy. I'm not saying sufficient in funds and sustenance for them to be wealthy. Doesn't mean we're pocket watching and we're saying it's bad to be wealthy, but this is not the norm. And a person who is in this kind of circumstance, you can't bribe them. You can't get them to sell their soul. They have no desire for the dunya. That's the person you want to have you teach you and your family religion. Someone who has no power, no money, no desire for people, whether he has 10,000 in the majlis or one people in the majlis, he's still teaching and it doesn't affect him whatsoever. MashaAllah. And some of us here in America, we complain, for example, I was cold last night. You took all of the blanket. So Allahu barik fikum. So we'll stop there, inshallah. Next week we'll talk about the conditions of the witnesses. If there's any questions, the floor is open. We'll end with tahleel and salah ala nabi. Nuhallil. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رب اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات. If you guys have any questions you can ask. If you'd like to ask privately, you're more than welcome to do that as well. I respect everybody's privacy. Allah. Ameen wa fikum. Brother Eddie, mashallah. So I'll leave the floor open. You guys are free to go. You're always free to go, but I'm saying we'll leave it just for about 30 seconds. And if not, we'll end the class, inshallah. I'm going to mark it in my book as well. This is where we stop. Okay, I think we have no questions. Ameen wa fikum Sayyidi. Oh, Ahmed, are you raising your hand? I see a tiny hand, but it's not as before. I'm still learning.
I had a question. Assalamu
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
You said the weaker saying for the Shafi'iyy school for the contract for the guardian giving away their daughter is that even if he is a sinful Muslim, he can give her away?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's say the father doesn't pray and he gave her away, the contract would still be valid.
It would be valid. Yeah.
Okay, and then my second question, you were saying about under Shafi'i about the woman cooking and cleaning. What was that? About the man and then the woman?
Some people, a lot of the marital friction that happens is due to rights not being fulfilled. And so, for example, in regards to cooking and cleaning, because a lot will complain, my husband doesn't help with the cooking and cleaning. However, in the Shafi'i school, it's not that he has to help with the cooking and cleaning. He has to do the cooking and cleaning. Yani, it would be unjust if he tells his wife, come on, I'm working all day, you cook and clean. So whether she's working or not, yani, he should go into the contract knowing the terms and conditions. Whereas in the Hanafi school and the Maliki school, for those who know fuqaha or shuyukh who can conduct it in that school, the woman does not have to cook and clean. And so we should be mindful of the masail that pertain to the school that we did our nikah.
And I forgot specifically the wording when you were talking about the Christian woman. That her lineage would have to it would have had to show that they converted before Prophet Muhammad, and that they didn't follow the perverted version of Christianity. You said
Correct. So as the case with the relative of Lady Khadija, radiallahu anha, although by that time the Injil was already perverted by the people, there were still people who embraced the nation of Isa, and they had the right creed. They didn't believe in, for example, a Holy Ghost or a Father or a Son. So despite the fact that and I'm not saying Christianity because I don't want to refer to them as Christians. That could be very confusing for people. If someone embraced the nation of Isa, yani, as a real Muslim, in this case, this person, then that lineage would be considered valid. So if a Christian today, their earliest ancestor from the nation of Isa was an actual follower of Isa, then if this is confirmed, you can marry such a person.
What about if the person, because I one time met a Christian from Lebanon that actually didn't believe in like the Holy Spirit and all of that, like they believed in like one God and that, you know, Jesus was a prophet. Would you have to know the lineage of that person, or? Right, because by virtue, if this person that the Muslim man is marrying, in the case of the Christian woman, let's say she doesn't believe in the Trinity, but the reality is she's not Muslim, right? So by virtue of her not being Muslim, then you have to not look at where her creed is, you have to look at all the way back at the earliest ancestor that they have that embraced the nation of Jesus alayhi salam. So as is the case, for example, in the Philippines or India, all those Christians in India and the Philippines, they converted to Christianity just within the last few decades. As for Habasha, because it was so close to the revelation of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and also the lineage has to be tracked paternally, right? And even the people who embraced Christianity, the true form and the adulterated form, they were also in Ethiopia. Because it's very difficult to track, this is why the fuqaha of Habasha said that it's haram to marry a Christian woman because it cannot be confirmed. Whereas for the Jewish woman, you don't have to have any confirmation. The only way it would be invalid is if you have proof that the earliest ancestor did not embrace the nation of Musa without a creedal perversion. I hope that answered your question. If it's not, you're more than welcome to ask. Yes,
Ameen wa fikum. Are there any other questions? And again, you guys, I presume you have my number, my email, whatever you prefer, Facebook, Instagram. If you have a more private or a personal case-related question, you're more than welcome to ask, inshallah ta'ala.
Assalamu alaikum, ya Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam, habibi. How are you?
This isn't pertaining to marriage, but just same thing with the lineage thing for the slaughter of a Christian or a Jew. Is it the same or is it?
Yes. So we mentioned the slaughtering as well. So the case is parallel to that of the marriage. So just like with the Jew, we can eat the kosher meat because we don't know the lineage of the Jewish slaughterer. But if they're from Bani Israel, which most Jews are, in this case, we don't have to investigate. Was their earliest Muslim ancestor embracing during the time of Nabi Musa's time? Or was it afterwards, within the past few centuries, as opposed to a couple thousand years ago? We don't have to investigate. We don't have to have any proof. We can eat it even if we have doubt. But in regards to the Christian slaughterers, like is the case of those on the West Coast, who say we can eat In-N-Out because I did my research and the In-N-Out burger is slaughtered by Christians, do you have confirmation that these Christian slaughterers, their lineage, goes back to someone who embraced Islam in the nation of Isa, and they did not embrace a perversion in the creed, like the Trinitarians, for example, as was the case of Lady Khadija's relative, Ibn Nawfal. He did not believe in the Trinity. He had actually the right belief. He had tanzih in his heart. If we don't have definitive evidence for the Christian, then in this case we cannot eat their meat. So even if I have a Christian neighbor and we go hunting and he slaughters, just the way the Muslims slaughter, if I cannot confirm his lineage, I cannot eat it. But my other neighbor, he's Jewish, and we go hunting as well, and he slaughters. I also can't confirm his lineage. Let's say I don't want to ask him, or he doesn't know himself. Even though I'm not sure, in this case, I can eat the meat that comes from his hunting or his slaughtering. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sure.
Ameen wa fikum, Sayyidi.